On March 14th, open-source satellite trackers detected something running at high speed through the South China Sea. Not a carrier, not a destroyer, an amphibious assault ship. USS Tripoli, LHA-7. The ship most defense analysts had written off as a failed experiment. On her flight deck, up to 20 F-35B Lightning II stealth fighters. In her hull, 2,500 Marines. Destination, Hormuz. Here is why that is strange. We broke 90% of Iran's military equation. 60 warships sit on the bottom of the Gulf. The missile factories that fed Hormuz its teeth are rubble. Drone production lines, silent. 2 carrier strike groups hold the perimeter from opposite oceans. Lincoln commands the Arabian Sea, Ford locks down the Red Sea. A third carrier, the Bush, is still crossing the Atlantic, days away. From the outside, the siege looks complete, but Hormuz is still closed. So look at what complete actually means when you run the numbers. More than 150 tankers sit anchored outside the strait, hemorrhaging fuel costs while they wait. Brent crude holds above $100 a barrel because the market prices certainty, and right now, certainty does not exist. The remaining 10% of Iran's capability, mines seated across the seabed, mobile launchers buried inside mountain tunnels, fast attack craft staged in coastal coves, is enough to deny a 6 nautical mile shipping corridor. And here is the brutal arithmetic that keeps every escort commander awake. You do not need to sink a convoy to close a strait. You need to sink one tanker, one burning hull in that corridor, and no insurer on Earth will write the next policy. The strait does not close by force, it closes by fear, and fear only needs one example. That is the paradox at the center of this war. The most powerful navy in human history solved 90% of the problem, but escort requires 100, and the distance between 90 and 100 is a supertanker on fire. Why is the Pentagon sending a ship most analysts dismissed to solve the problem 2 supercarriers could not? What can 2,500 Marines do that 50,000 sailors cannot? If you are proud of the men and women operating these machines, subscribe to Navy Decoded. We do not sell headlines, we solve equations. To answer that, we need to understand the weapon they are sending. A ship America built, hated, and nearly scrapped. Because the story of why it was called a mistake is the same story that explains why it might now be the answer. When the Navy designed the America-class Flight Zero, they made a decision that drew fire from Congress, Marine Corps generals, and defense analysts alike. They removed the well deck from the blueprint entirely. The well deck is the ballast-flooded chamber at the bottom of an amphibious ship. Every assault ship since World War II has carried one. It is how you launch LCAC hovercraft, how you deploy landing craft. It is the identity of an amphibious warship. Designing an amphib without a well deck is like engineering a cargo truck and forgetting the bed. The backlash was fierce enough to force the Navy's hand. Congress mandated the well deck be restored on the third hull, USS Bougainville, LHA-8. The first 2, America, LHA-6, and Tripoli, LHA-7, were written off as failed experiments. Amphibious ships that forgot how to be amphibious. The defense press agreed. The ship was a mistake. But the Navy understood something the critics did not. The space the well deck used to occupy unlocked a doubled hangar bay, expanded aviation maintenance facilities, a fully equipped surgical hospital, and jet fuel storage that previous amphib designs could never accommodate. Tripoli did not lose the ability to put Marines ashore. Tripoli changed how it puts Marines ashore, from the sea surface to the air. And in return, it gained something no other amphibious ship on Earth possesses: the ability to operate 20 F-35B Lightning II stealth fighters simultaneously. Proven off the coast of California in April 2022, 16 jets from Marine Aircraft Group 13 and 4 from VMX-1 operating from her deck in a single surge evolution. 20 F-35Bs, nearly half the air wing of a $13 billion supercarrier, on a ship that costs $3.5 billion. The ship they called a mistake turned out to be the most dangerous pocket carrier afloat. Now here is why that mistake is exactly right for Hormuz. We explained in a previous video why carriers refuse to enter the Persian Gulf. That 540 nautical mile bathtub Iran spent 40 years turning into a kill box. 100,000 tons of irreplaceable steel is too valuable to risk inside it. Tripoli displaces 44,000 tons. She is not irreplaceable the way Ford or Lincoln are. In the Pentagon's risk calculus, losing Tripoli is painful. Losing a carrier is catastrophic. Tripoli is expendable enough to get close, and powerful enough to change the equation. And she brings something no carrier possesses: 2,500 Marines distributed across 5 ships. The 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit out of Okinawa, the only continuously forward-deployed MEU on the planet. They just completed Exercise Iron Fist 26 with the Japanese Self-Defense Force, practicing island seizure, electronic warfare, and rapid amphibious assault from February 23rd through March 9th, 2 weeks before Hormuz called. Escorting the Tripoli, the EEGI's cruiser Robert Smalls, CG-62, the Arleigh Burke destroyer Rafael Peralta, DDG-115, and 2 San Antonio-class LPDs, New Orleans and San Diego, carrying the Marines and their equipment. There is a cost. Pulling Tripoli from Japan strips the Indo-Pacific of its only amphibious rapid reaction force. That is not a light decision. The Pentagon is withdrawing assets from one theater to solve another, and that tells you exactly how important Hormuz is to America right now. The ship they called a mistake is now running at high speed through the South China Sea toward the narrowest strait on Earth, and it carries something nobody has brought to Hormuz before. Not more missiles, but an entirely new dimension: the ground. Iran built beach defenses to stop landing craft from the sea. Tripoli has no landing craft. Its Marines come from the sky. Nobody knows exactly how CENTCOM will employ Tripoli. The orders are classified, and any channel that claims otherwise is guessing. But the capability is not classified, and Tripoli introduces 3 capabilities that did not exist at Hormuz before she sailed. Each one solves a piece of the 10% problem the carriers left behind. The problem: Lincoln and Ford operate in the open ocean outside the Persian Gulf, too valuable to risk inside the bathtub. That means no persistent air cover inside the strait. A combat air patrol launched from Lincoln at 500 nautical miles has to fly for over an hour just to reach the shipping lanes. Time on station is measured in minutes before the jets need to turn back for fuel. That gap, the gap between takeoff and presence, is where Iranian drones find tankers. Tripoli solves this with physics. At 44,000 tons and $3.5 billion, she is expendable enough in the risk calculus to operate close to Hormuz. Her F-35Bs are Stouvel, short takeoff, vertical landing. No catapults needed. They launch from an 844-foot deck. Operating at 100 nautical miles instead of 500 changes one variable that changes everything: time on station. Run the math. An F-35B launching from Lincoln at 500 nautical miles cruises at roughly 450 knots. That is over an hour of transit each way, 2 hours of fuel burned just getting to the fight and back. On a standard load, that leaves maybe 40 minutes of actual patrol time over the shipping lanes. 3 sorties per day per jet, and you still have gaps measured in hours. Now, run the same math from Tripoli at 100 miles. 13 minutes each way. Time on station triples. Gap between patrols shrinks to minutes instead of hours. And those minutes are the difference between an Iranian Mohajer 6 drone finding a tanker or an F-35B finding the drone first. Tripoli's passive sensors detect surveillance drones before those drones transmit targeting coordinates back to shore launchers. Kill the drone, and you break the kill chain. We explained how that chain works in the previous video. Tripoli is the tool that severs it at the source. Tripoli solves the sky, but the strait has 3 dimensions, and 2 of them are still Iran's. 3 fortified islands sit directly inside the shipping corridor, and no amount of air patrol neutralizes a missile launcher buried in reinforced concrete. Iran controls Abu Musa, Greater Tumb, and Lesser Tumb, seized in 1971. Iran fortified them with anti-ship missile batteries, coastal radar, artillery positions, and IRGC garrisons. They are unsinkable aircraft carriers, fixed platforms that can launch ordnance into the shipping lanes at point-blank range. Even after Epic Fury's air campaign, any surviving capability on those islands threatens every vessel transiting the corridor. This is the scenario Tripoli was optimized for, and this is where removing the well deck becomes an advantage, not a liability. A conventional amphibious ship would have to push landing craft through those same mined waters to reach the island. Tripoli does not. Marines insert by vertical envelopment, MV-22 Ospreys and CH-53 helicopters, not landing craft. They fly over the minefields instead of sailing through them. They do not touch the water Iran spent decades preparing to deny. Strike teams neutralize missile launchers and radar installations, extract whatever intelligence they can carry, and withdraw to the ship before the garrison can mount a counter. No permanent occupation, just a position that no longer shoots at tankers. The precedent exists. Operation Praying Mantis, 1988. Marines from USS Trenton boarded and destroyed Iranian oil platforms in the Persian Gulf in a single day. The 31st MEU trains for exactly this kind of operation. The honest caveat: raiding a fortified island is high risk. The current state of Iranian defenses on these islands after 2 weeks of airstrikes remains unclear. This is the lowest probability scenario, but the highest impact one, and it is now on the table. But here is what matters. The fact that a raid is possible forces Iran to garrison those islands, and every IRGC soldier defending an island is one not defending the coastline. Raids solve islands. But the strait is not only islands, it is also 6 nautical miles of open water that no warship can safely enter. So the question becomes larger. How do you control a corridor without putting a ship inside it? The concept is called Expeditionary Advanced Base Operations, the central idea behind the Marine Corps' Force Design 2030 overhaul, the most radical restructuring of the Marines since World War II. It has never been tested in combat. Hormuz may be the first. Here is how it works. Marines fly ashore, to small islands, uninhabited coastline, or allied territory in Oman or the UAE. They establish temporary bases, HIMARS launchers, radar arrays, and forward arming and refueling points where F-35Bs and Ospreys can land, rearm, and relaunch without returning to the ship. What this creates? A kill zone spanning the entire width of the strait. HIMARS firing ATACMS at 162 nautical miles or PRSM at 270 nautical miles can engage any fast attack craft, submarine, or mine-laying vessel that enters the shipping corridor. Anti-ship firepower from shore. Simultaneously, Marines provide security for the LCS mine countermeasure ships already operating in the area. Small boats screening against fast boat harassment, F-35Bs overhead creating a protective bubble. Mine clearance still takes weeks. But Tripoli accelerates the timeline by protecting the sweepers, instead of waiting for the sweeping to finish before escort begins. That rewrites the physics of strait control. You no longer need warships inside the strait to control the strait. Marines on shore create a firepower bubble that is cheaper, harder to find, and impossible to sink. The precedent is not theoretical. HIMARS already sank Iranian warships during Epic Fury, firing from Bahrain. The 31st MEU just practiced a similar scenario during exercise Iron Fist 26. The honest caveat: EABO doctrine is new, untested at this scale. The logistics of sustaining forward bases under Iranian counterfire remain unproven. But the physics has already been proven. HIMARS reached Iranian warships from Bahrain. The doctrine is new, the weapon is not. 3 separate scenarios, but none of them matters in isolation. Stack them together, and something emerges that Iran has never faced and has no playbook to counter. This is not about adding more firepower to a problem firepower already failed to solve. It is about adding a dimension that did not exist in this theater until Tripoli sailed. For 40 years, Iran only prepared to counter threats from the sea, American warships on the horizon. Iran mastered that equation: mines below the waterline, cruise missiles from shore batteries, fast attack craft swarming in the shallow. Every dollar, every doctrine, every fortification was built to make the Gulf too expensive for ships to enter. The first 2 weeks of Epic Fury added a threat from the sky. Carrier air wings dismantled air defenses, flattened factories, crippled military infrastructure. But aircraft fly sorties and return to base. They do not stay. When Tripoli arrives, the equation gains a threat from the ground. Marines can appear on any island, any coastline, any allied position along the strait. And Marines stay. That is the dimension Iran never built defenses against. Iran built coastal defenses against ships entering the strait, mines, shore-based missiles, fast attack swarms. Iran built air defenses against aircraft bombing from above. Those defenses are now crippled. Iran built beach defenses to stop landing craft from the sea. Tripoli has no landing craft. Its Marines come from the sky. Now look at it from Tehran's side. Defend the islands against marine raids, and the coastline lies open to EABO. Fortify the coastline, and the islands fall. Disperse across all positions, and there is not enough left at any single point to stop anything. 3 responses, 3 failures. The equation has no correct answer, because Iran built defenses against ships and aircraft, not against Marines who arrived by helicopter onto positions that were never supposed to be contested. That variable has never existed in Iran's coastal defense equation, and Iran cannot build a counter for it in weeks, not when its factories are rubble and its air defenses are silent. Be honest about what this does not mean. It does not mean Hormuz opens tomorrow. Mine clearance still takes time. Escort still carries risk. But Tripoli shifts the timeline from months to weeks. And more importantly, it shifts the initiative. Before Tripoli, we waited for the equation to solve itself, grinding Iran down through naval siege while oil markets bled. After Tripoli, we solve it, actively, from multiple dimensions simultaneously. If this video changed how you look at an amphibious assault ship, subscribe to Navy Decoded. The next equation is already being built. So let us return to the paradox we started with, the 10% problem that 2 supercarriers could not solve. Carriers solved 90%, an extraordinary achievement by any standard in military history. But Hormuz does not grade on a curve. Hormuz runs on absolute certainty, and 90% is not 100. A single mine, a single missile, a single tanker burning in the corridor is all it takes to keep the insurance markets shut and the shipping lanes empty. The Navy did not solve the last 10% by sending more ships into the corridor. They sent a force designed to operate where ships cannot. On islands, on coastlines, in the sky above the strait, at ranges no carrier can sustain. The Navy refused to enter Hormuz, so they sent the Marines. Not to invade Iran, not to occupy, to fill the gap between 90 and 100%, by solving the equation from dimensions Iran never defended. Iran spent 40 years solving the equation for ships. They solved it perfectly. Mines, missiles, swarms, mountain tunnels, every defense calibrated to one variable, American steel on the waterline. They solved the right equation, but it was the wrong variable. Carriers siege from outside, Marines solve from inside. And the ship they called a mistake turned out to be the answer nobody saw coming. Dismissed.